In the spring of 2019, in a town near the capital of Tennessee, a small wooden chapel dedicated to the Virgin Mary and set it ablaze at 2:15 in the morning. The fire consumed everything, walls, roof, bench, in minutes. When the sun rose, the men returned to see only ashes and charred ground. What they found in the ashes changed their lives forever. A Virgin Mary miracle that started with a gallon of kerosene and a decision none of them should have made. Before we continue, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary have reached. And if you haven't yet joined our family, subscribe now, because here, each day, we witness the tender love and mighty power of the Mother of God. His name was Robert Callahan, 54 years old, the kind of man every street in small-town Tennessee turns to when something breaks. Leaky faucet, storm-damaged roof, dispute over a property line, Robert fixed it. He spoke loud, decided fast, and people listened because he was usually right. He had lived in the same modest ranch-style house for 32 years, worked as a sales manager at a regional lumber yard, knew every supplier discount and every contractor's weak spot. Robert wasn't cruel. He paid his bills, helped his neighbors, kept his lawn edged. He simply believed problems had solutions, and he was good at delivering them. His wife, Ellen, understood him better than anyone. She used to say Robert moved through life like a freight train. Once the track was set, forward was the only direction. Church wasn't part of his routine. He had nothing against it. He just didn't see the need. Work, family, a cold beer on the porch after a long day. That was enough. Next door lived Evelyn Monroe, 79, in the same clapboard house she and her late husband had bought in 1972. Widowed 12 years, children scattered across state lines. She kept to herself, but never seemed lonely. Her front porch always had a spare chair and a pitcher of iced tea for anyone who stopped by. Everyone knew about the small statue of the Virgin Mary on her living room mantel, candle burning beside it most evenings. In early March 2019, she did something new. With help from a local carpenter she had known since he was a boy, she built a simple wooden chapel in the back corner of her fenced yard. The structure measured 8 by 10 feet. Cedar walls, pitched tin roof, a single door that latched but stayed open during daylight. Inside, a handmade oak bench wide enough for two, a small iron candle stand, and a 2-foot carved wooden image of Our Lady of Grace, painted simply, hands open, mantle blue, face gentle. Evelyn placed fresh flowers at the base whenever she could. She never advertised it. She didn't need to. At first the chapel drew only her. Then a widow 2 doors down started walking over at sunrise to sit on the bench and pray the rosary. A young couple from the next street joined after their newborn spent a week in the NICU. Word moved quietly. People who needed quiet found it there. Within a month, 5 or 6 visitors came each day. Some lit candles, some knelt, some simply sat. Cars parked along the curb, never blocking driveways. Conversations after prayer stayed hushed on the sidewalk. Robert noticed the first week. Strangers on the street at odd hours. Extra vehicles he didn't recognize. He watched from his porch, coffee in hand, jaw tight. One afternoon he walked over, knocked on Evelyn's screen door. "Morning, Evelyn. Mind if we talk?" She invited him in, offered tea. He stayed standing. "I respect what you're doing," he began. "Your faith, your property. But the traffic's picking up. People parking, walking through. It's starting to feel less like a neighborhood." Evelyn listened without interrupting. "I've asked folks to park a block over when they can. Most do. They still come down the street. Kids notice. It changes things." She nodded slowly. "I'll speak to them again." Robert thanked her and left. The next few days the curb stayed clearer. But visitors kept coming. Not crowds, just steady. Robert tried the neighborhood association next. He drafted a polite complaint, gathered signatures from 3 others who agreed that increased activity disrupted residential peace. The board reviewed the zoning code. The chapel sat fully within Evelyn's property lines. No permit required for a private devotional structure under 12 feet. No violation. Robert read the email at his kitchen table. Ellen watched him fold the paper twice, set it aside. This isn't right, he said. One person doesn't get to turn a street into a gathering place. Ellen spoke carefully. It's 10 people a day at most, Robert. They're quiet. They leave. Today it's 10. Tomorrow? Evelyn went in for knee replacement in late April. Nothing life-threatening, but recovery meant 6 to 8 weeks away. Her oldest son drove down from Knoxville, helped her pack, took her to the hospital, then to his house to heal. The house sat dark, garden untended, chapel door closed. Some visitors still came. They left flowers at the threshold, prayed from the fence line. But without Evelyn lighting the candle each evening, the numbers dropped. Within 10 days, the yard stayed empty most hours. Robert saw the change from his back window. He mentioned it casually at a Saturday barbecue across the street. When she comes back, it'll start again, he said, turning ribs on the grill. More cars, more people. Worse than before. One of the men asked, "What do you figure should happen?" Robert let the question hang. He didn't answer. Not then. A week later, in another neighbor's garage over beers, he spoke plainer. If the chapel isn't there when she returns, the problem ends. I shifted. Someone asked, "You're talking about tearing it down?" "I'm talking about fixing what's broken." No one agreed out loud. No one refused. The idea sat among them like smoke. The decisive conversation came the following Friday night in Robert's own garage. Door down, lights low. For other men, men he had known for years, men who trusted his judgment, listened as he laid it out. We do it clean. 2 in the morning. Streets asleep. Kerosene, quick burn. Small structure, dry wood. It'll be over fast. Silence followed. Then one voice. When? Saturday night. Tomorrow. They left without shaking hands. Each went home to his own bed. Saturday night arrived heavy and still. Tennessee heat lingered even after midnight, thick enough to press against skin. No breeze moved the leaves. Streetlights cast long shadows across empty lawns. At 2:10, Robert slipped out his back door, wearing dark clothes and carrying a red plastic gallon jug of kerosene he had bought 2 days earlier at the hardware store on the edge of town. He crossed his yard in 6 long steps, vaulted the low chain-link fence that separated his property from Evelyn's, and waited in the shadow of her oak tree. Ray appeared first from the alley behind the houses, moving low and quiet. Steve came next, boots soft on the grass. Bill and Tommy arrived together from the street side, hoods up, hands in pockets. No one spoke. They gathered in a loose semicircle around the chapel. The small building looked smaller in the dark, would pale under moonlight, doors standing open as always. Robert unscrewed the jug cap. The sharp chemical smell cut through the humid air immediately. He poured steadily along the base of the front wall, then the sides, then across the bench just inside the door. Liquid pooled dark on the cedar boards, soaked in fast. He handed the jug to Ray, who added more along the back corner. When the container felt light, Robert set it down. He pulled a book of matches from his pocket. Struck one. The small flame flared orange. He held it low, hesitated 1 second, long enough to feel the heat on his fingers, then dropped it onto the soaked wood. Fire caught instantly. A soft whoosh, then crackle. Flames raced up the walls, hungry. The dry cedar popped and snapped. Within 30 seconds, the entire structure glowed. Heat pushed outward in waves. The 5 men stepped back, faces lit flickering orange. No one moved to stop it. No one spoke. The chapel burned fast. Small size, old wood, accelerant. Roof beams gave way with a groan. Tin sheets buckled, fell inward with metallic clangs. The bench collapsed into coals. In under 8 minutes, the fire settled to low orange pulses among black remains. Smoke rose thin and straight into the still night. No sirens. No lights flicked on in nearby houses. The street stayed asleep. Robert looked at each man once. Go. They scattered. Ray back through the alley. Steve and Bill toward the street. Tommy last, glancing over his shoulder. Robert crossed the fence again, walked straight to his own back door, entered without sound. He stripped in the laundry room, shoved clothes into the washer, started a cold cycle. Shower next, hot water, soap, scrub until skin stung. He dried off, pulled on clean shorts and a t-shirt, slid into bed beside Ellen. She breathed steady, deep in sleep. Robert lay on his back, eyes open to the ceiling fan turning slow circles. Heart still hammered, but his mind felt oddly quiet. Done. Fixed, he closed his eyes. Sleep came faster than he expected. Sunday morning broke clear. Robert woke at 6:35 to the alarm. Coffee maker hissed in the kitchen. He poured a mug, added 1 spoon sugar, carried it to the back porch. From there he could see over the fence. Black rectangle where the chapel had stood. Charred posts jutting like broken teeth. Ashes gray and deep. Then he saw it in the exact center of the burned scar, standing upright on what remained of its small pedestal, the wooden statue of the Virgin Mary. 2 feet tall. Blue mantle, white dress, hands open. No char. No blistering. No warping from heat. Soot dusted the surface in places, but the carving remained sharp, colors still visible beneath the gray film. The statue had not moved. It had not fallen. It stood as though the fire had passed around it. Robert set the mug down hard on the railing. Coffee sloshed over the edge. He stared. Logic kicked in fast. Fire-resistant coating. Some kind of treatment Evelyn used. Specialty wood. Something. There had to be a reason. He jumped the fence again. Walked straight through the ash, boots leaving prints in the soft black. Stopped 3 feet from the statue. Heat still radiated faintly from the ground. Close enough to smell charred cedar and faint kerosene residue. The figure looked back at him, calm, unchanged. Bench reduced to charcoal less than 3 feet away. Wall remnants black behind it. Everything else gone. Everything except this. He reached out once, almost touched the carved hand, then pulled back. Turned and walked home without looking again. Ellen was in the kitchen when he came through the door. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep longer. She looked at his face. Something wrong. Nothing. He poured fresh coffee, sat at the table, stared into the mug. The image stayed behind his eyes, standing, intact, impossible. By 8:30 the street knew. A woman walking her dog, Linda from 3 houses down, stopped at Evelyn's fence, saw the ashes, saw the statue. She called her sister on the phone right there on the sidewalk. Within 20 minutes 4 neighbors stood together looking over the chain link. How? Linda asked no one in particular. Everything else is gone. Everything. Another neighbor, a retired teacher named Paul, shook his head. "I helped Evelyn bring it home from the carver last year. Plain hardwood. Maple, I think. Nothing special." Word moved faster than Sunday traffic. By noon 12 people had gathered on the sidewalk. Some took photos with their phones. Some made the sign of the cross. A teenage girl left a single daisy at the fence line. No one crossed into the yard. They just looked. Robert watched from his porch, second cup of coffee gone cold. Ray drove up at 11:15, parked in front of Robert's driveway, walked straight to the garage without knocking. Robert met him inside. Door closed. "You saw it," Ray said. "Not a question." "I saw." "How?" Robert leaned against the workbench. "There's an explanation. Always is. Maybe the fire didn't reach the center. Maybe the wind pushed it outward. Maybe the wood was denser there." Ray stared at him. "We poured kerosene on every side. I watched the flames take the whole thing. Nothing should be left standing." "I don't know, Ray. You know it doesn't add up." Robert looked at the floor. "It'll pass. People will forget." Ray shook his head once. "It's still there. Standing. People are taking pictures. They're talking." Ray left without another word. Robert stayed in the garage until lunch. Sat on an old stool. Thought. The statue stayed in his mind. Upright. Silent. Refusing to disappear. The statue remained standing in the ashes for days. No one moved it. Neighbors came by the fence line in ones and twos at first, then small groups. A retired couple left a small vase of white lilies on the sidewalk the second afternoon. A teenage girl from down the block knelt there for 10 minutes on Tuesday, eyes closed, lips moving silently. By Wednesday, photos appeared in the local Facebook group. Blurry cell phone shots of the dark rectangle and the pale wooden figure rising untouched from the center. Comments filled quickly. How is this possible? Fire didn't touch her. Sign. Robert scrolled through them on his phone during lunch break at the lumber yard, jaw tight. Then closed the app. He tried to return to routine. Work orders, supplier calls, invoices. But focus slipped. He double-counted a shipment of 2x4s Tuesday afternoon, something he had not done in 20 years on the job. His supervisor noticed, asked once if everything was all right at home. Robert said yes, voice flat, and went back to the warehouse floor. At night, he lay awake beside Ellen, staring at the ceiling fan blades turning slow circles in the dark. 3 o'clock became his regular hour. He rose, made black coffee in the kitchen, sat at the table with the light off, listened to the refrigerator hum. Ellen woke once, stood in the doorway in her robe. You're not sleeping. I'm fine. You're up every night. Insomnia. It passes. She looked at him a long moment, then turned back to the bedroom without pressing. Robert stayed in the kitchen until dawn light appeared at the window, then showered, dressed, left for work before Ellen woke again. Thursday evening, Bill showed up at the lumber yard just before closing. Bill never came to the store unless he needed something for his own projects. This time he carried nothing but tension in his shoulders. We need to talk. Not here. Then where? My garage. Tonight. The five met again after dark. Door down, single bulb overhead. The air felt thicker than the first time. Ray leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. Steve sat on an overturned crate. Bill and Tommy stood near the door like they might leave any second. Robert spoke first. No one knows it was us. No one saw. It'll fade. Ray looked straight at him. The statue won't fade. It's still there. Every day, people walk by and stop. They pray on the sidewalk now. Kids leave flowers. It's not going away. It's wood, Robert said. Fire missed it somehow. Wind. Updraft. Something. Bill shook his head. We soaked every side. I watched the flames climb the walls. Nothing should be left standing. Nothing. Silence settled. Tommy spoke quietly. I can't drive past her house anymore without looking. Every time I see it standing there, I feel sick. Robert rubbed his face with both hands. Give it time. Ray stepped forward. I'm going to tell her. The words landed hard. Robert looked up fast. You do that, and we all go down. I know. You'll lose your job. Your house. Everything. I already lost sleep. Peace. My wife asks why I'm different. I don't have answers. I can't keep pretending. Steve spoke next. If he goes, I go. Bill nodded once. Same. Tommy looked at Robert. We did it together. We own it together. Robert felt the room tilt slightly. Not fear exactly, something heavier. He stared at the concrete floor. 1 more week. 1 week. Then we decide. Ray studied him. 1 week. They left one by one. Robert locked the garage door, turned off the light, stood in the dark a long minute. When he went inside, Ellen was reading in bed. She looked up. You all right? Yeah. She closed the book. You don't look all right. He sat on the edge of the mattress. Just tired. She reached over, touched his arm. He didn't pull away. But he didn't speak either. Wednesday afternoon, 4.5 weeks after surgery, Evelyn returned. Her son drove her from Knoxville in his SUV. Robert was home early, left the yard at 3, told his supervisor he had a headache. He watched from the upstairs bedroom window through a gap in the curtains. The car parked. Son got out first, walked around, opened the passenger door. Evelyn stepped down slowly, cane in right hand, left hand on the door frame. Bandage visible above her knee. She looked at the house, smiled small, then turned toward the backyard. The smile vanished. She walked the side path, cane tapping soft on concrete, son close behind. When she reached the corner where the chapel had stood, she stopped. Robert saw her shoulders drop, saw her stare at the black scar on the grass, the scattered ash, the few charred posts still upright. Then she saw the statue. She stood motionless. Sunlight caught the carved face, made the blue mantle look almost bright again against the soot. Evelyn's son put an arm around her waist. She leaned into him. Her free hand rose to her mouth. Tears came, quiet, steady, no sound Robert could hear from the window. Not anger, not despair, something deeper. They stayed like that a long time. Son knelt beside her, took her hand. Evelyn kept looking at the statue. Robert watched until his own eyes burned. Then he let the curtain fall. He sat on the edge of the bed. Hands shook, not from cold, not from nerves, from seeing himself clearly for the first time in years. A man who set fire to the private prayer space of a 79-year-old widow who had never raised her voice to anyone on the street, who left her door open for coffee and conversation, who asked nothing from her neighbors except quiet respect. Robert had always believed he was a good man, practical, helpful, fair. In that moment, staring at the empty wall, he wasn't sure what he believed anymore. The days that followed pressed harder. Work became mechanical, orders filled, customers greeted, but his mind stayed elsewhere. Ellen stopped asking questions. She simply watched him move through the house like a shadow of himself. Mistakes piled quietly. Wrong delivery date on an invoice, forgotten callback to a contractor. His boss pulled him aside once. "You need time off?" "No, you sure?" "I'm sure." The boss let it go. Robert went back to the floor. Every morning, he drove past Evelyn's house. The statue stayed in place. Someone had swept a circle around it. Fresh flowers appeared. Daisies one day, lilies the next. People still stopped on the sidewalk. Some prayed aloud. Some stood silent. Robert never joined them, but he never looked away either. The 5 men stood on Evelyn's sidewalk at 9 o'clock Tuesday morning. Robert rang the doorbell. His hand stayed steady, but his pulse beat loud in his ears. The others waited behind him. Ray closest, then Steve, Bill, Tommy, shoulders squared like men facing a judge. Evelyn opened the door. Cane in one hand, housecoat buttoned neatly. She looked at each face once. No surprise showed. She stepped aside. "Come in." They filed into the living room. Same flowered sofa, same family photos on the walls, same small statue of the Virgin Mary on the corner table with a fresh candle burning beside it. Evelyn sat in her armchair. The men remained standing, hats in their hands. Robert spoke first. Voice low, clear. "Evelyn, it was us. The fire. I planned it. I poured the kerosene. I lit the match. These 4 helped because I asked them to. The idea was mine. The decision was mine." Silence filled the room. Evelyn looked at him steadily. No flinch. No quick breath. Robert continued. "I told myself it was about the neighborhood. About peace. About keeping things the way they were. I was wrong. I had no right. What I did, what we did, was the worst thing I've ever done in my life." His voice cracked on the last word. He stopped, looked at the carpet. Evelyn waited until the quiet stretched thin. Then she spoke. "I knew it was you, Robert." He lifted his eyes. "The day I came home, my son asked who might have done it. I told him I didn't know. But I knew. Everyone on this street came by that week. Linda, Paul, Denise, even folks I barely speak to. They asked if I was all right, if I needed anything, if they could help clean up. You live next door. You never came. Not once." Robert felt heat rise in his face. "But I also knew something else," she went on. "I knew you'd come eventually. Not because someone forced you, because something inside you wouldn't let it rest. And here you are, all 5 of you, looking me in the eye, telling the truth. That takes more courage than most men ever find." She shifted in the chair, cane resting across her knees. "I'm going to do something you might not expect. I'm going to forgive you." Ray exhaled softly. Steve's shoulders dropped a fraction. "Not because what you did was small," Evelyn said. "It was large. It hurt. But I ask for mercy every night when I pray. If I can't give it when it's asked, then what good is my faith? So I forgive you. All of you. Robert swallowed. We don't deserve that. Maybe not. But I'm giving it anyway. She paused. I do have one condition. Name it, Robert said instantly. You're going to rebuild the chapel. With your own hands. From the ground up. Same size. Same materials if you can find them. Better if you can make it better. Every board, every nail, every coat of paint. Your work. So that every time you walk past it, you remember. Not just what was lost. What was given back. The men looked at one another. No argument rose. Robert nodded once. We'll do it. Evelyn smiled. Small, tired, real. Thank you. They left quietly. No handshakes. No promises beyond the one already made. Saturday morning, Robert arrived at Evelyn's backyard at 6 o'clock sharp. Pickup loaded with tools, broom, shovel, wheelbarrow. He started alone. Swept ash into piles. Sifted through debris for any salvageable pieces. Hinges, a scorched door latch. Separated clean ground from blackened soil. Ray showed up at 7 o'clock without a word. Took the shovel, began leveling the site. Steve arrived at 8 o'clock with his flatbed truck, new cedar boards, treated posts, tin roofing stacked neat. Bill and Tommy came together at 8:30 carrying paint cans and a new candle stand Bill had bought from the hardware store. Evelyn stepped out at 9 o'clock with a tray, coffee and thermoses, homemade oatmeal cookies, pitcher of orange juice. She set it on a folding table Robert had brought, said nothing, went back inside. They worked in rhythm. No music. No chatter beyond measurements and passes of tools. Each man moved with purpose. Robert measured twice before every cut. Ray dug post holes straight and deep. Steve checked levels obsessively. Bill sanded edges smooth. Tommy painted primer with careful strokes. Neighbors noticed. Linda walked over at noon with a cooler of sandwiches and iced tea. Paul brought a handmade oak bench he had finished in his garage, varnished, sturdy, exactly the right length for two people. Denise dropped off a tray of brownies mid-afternoon. By evening, the foundation was set, posts plumb, first wall frame up. The next Saturday, they raised the walls. Sunday, they sheathed the roof. Third weekend, siding, door hung, windows fitted. Robert insisted on extra bracing, stronger than before. He stained the cedar a warm honey tone, painted trim crisp white. Fourth Saturday, interior swept clean, new candle stand placed, fresh gravel path laid from the gate. Evelyn came out when the last brushstroke dried. She carried the wooden statue herself, clean now, soot gone, colors bright again under the sun. Robert had built a simple pedestal inside, raised slightly so the figure could be seen from the door. She set the statue in place carefully, adjusted it once, stepped back. The 5 men stood in a loose line behind her. Dirty hands, sawdust on shirts, quiet. Evelyn turned. Thank you. 3 words. Enough? She walked back to the house. The men stayed a moment longer, looking at the finished chapel. Simple, solid, standing exactly where the old one had been. Then they gathered tools, loaded trucks, went home without ceremony. Robert drove the short distance to his own driveway. Parked. Sat behind the wheel a long minute. Looked across at the new chapel through the fence. The statue visible through the open door. Calm. Present. He got out. Went inside. Found Ellen in the kitchen. He told her everything. The planning. The fire. The statue that didn't burn. The confession. The rebuilding. All of it. Ellen listened without interrupting. When he finished, she stepped close, rested her forehead against his chest. You did the hardest part, she said. You told the truth. Robert closed his eyes. For the first time in months, his breathing came even. Months passed after the chapel stood complete again. The new structure looked stronger than the first. Cedar boards properly sealed against Tennessee humidity. Roof pitched a touch steeper to shed rain faster. Door hung on heavier hinges that opened smooth and silent. Evelyn kept it open during daylight hours, just as before. Visitors returned steadily, not crowds, but enough that the sidewalk saw quiet footsteps most afternoons. Some came from the original group, widow with her rosary, young couple with their now toddler. New faces appeared too. A nurse from the hospital where Evelyn had recovered, a high school teacher who stopped after a difficult parent conference, an older man who sat on the new bench Paul had made and simply breathed for 20 minutes before leaving. Robert noticed the changes without comment. He drove past every morning on his way to the lumber yard. Sometimes he slowed enough to see the statue through the open door, blue mantle catching light, hands open, unchanged. He no longer felt the old irritation rise in his chest. In its place came something quieter. Not peace exactly. Recognition that he started sleeping through the night again. The 3 o'clock wake-up stopped. Coffee stayed in the pot until Ellen poured her first cup. At work, the small errors vanished. Orders matched. Calls returned promptly. His supervisor stopped asking if he needed time off. Robert carried himself the same way. Voice still carried across the yard when needed. Decisions still came quick, but the edge had softened. People noticed. They didn't name it. They just treated him the same, yet different. Ellen knew the full story from the night. He told her everything. She never repeated it. Never asked for details he hadn't given. She simply stayed close. One evening after supper, she found him on the back porch looking across the fence. She sat beside him on the step. "You're different," she said. He nodded once. "I know." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Good different." He put his arm around her. They watched the light fade behind Evelyn's roofline. The chapel silhouette stayed clear against the sky. Ray began stopping by the chapel once or twice a week. He never announced it. He parked a block away, walked over, sat on the bench for 10 or 15 minutes, then left. No rosary, no spoken prayer, just silence. Steve mentioned it to Robert one afternoon at the yard. "Ray's been going over there." "I know. He doesn't say much when he comes back. He doesn't need to." Bill and Tommy kept their distance at first. Then one Saturday, Bill showed up with a small metal cross he had welded in his shop. Simple, sturdy. He fixed it to the peak of the roof where the tin met wood. No one asked him to. He just did it. Tommy brought a flat stone he had found by the river, etched a single word on it with a nail, "Mercy," placed it at the base of the pedestal inside. Small acts. Unspoken. Understood. Evelyn never told a soul who set the fire. Not her son. Not the neighbors who asked. When people wondered aloud how the statue survived, she smiled and said, "The Lord has his ways." Nothing more. The story stayed between the 5 men and her. And in time, even that weight lightened, not erased, but carried differently. One clear October afternoon, Robert walked over alone. No one else around. Evelyn was out with her son for the day. The chapel door stood open. He stepped inside for the first time since the rebuilding. The air smelled of fresh cedar and faint candle wax. The statue looked down at him. Same calm face, same open hands. He stood there a long minute. Then the scent came. Roses. Sudden. Strong. Not faint perfume from a neighbor's yard. Full, sweet, surrounding him like he had stepped into a greenhouse at peak bloom. No roses grew anywhere near Evelyn's property. No bouquet sat inside. The smell held for perhaps 12 seconds, long enough to make his chest tighten, then vanished clean. Robert stayed still. Heart beat hard, but not from fear. He looked at the statue again. Said nothing aloud. Didn't need to. He stepped back outside, closed the door gently behind him, walked home. That evening he told Ellen about the roses. She listened, eyes steady. "You believe it now?" she asked. He thought a moment. "I don't know what I believe, but I know what I felt." She took his hand. "That's enough." The neighborhood kept turning. Same streets, same houses, same people, but the air felt lighter somehow. Conversations on porches lasted longer. Help came quicker when needed. Robert still fixed what broke. Pipes, fences, arguments. But he listened first now. Decided slower. Spoke softer when it mattered. That if you ask him today whether the statue's survival was a miracle, he'll pause. He'll say there might be an explanation, some chemical in the wood, some freak pattern in the flames. He'll shrug like the practical man he still is. But if you watch his eyes when he says it, you'll see the certainty isn't as hard as it used to be. You'll see a man who once thought he had every answer, who now leaves room for things he can't measure. And maybe that shift, the quiet opening in a heart that once stayed closed, that may be the deepest part of the story. A chapel burned to ash, a statue that stood, a man who finally knelt, not in fear, but in something closer to wonder. Before I finish this story, I want to invite you to something close. If the mercy shown to Robert and the others has touched you, if it reminds you that forgiveness can rebuild what anger tears down, come join our prayer community. People from every corner gather here to pray the rosary together, share burdens, and lift one another in faith. Click the button below to become a channel member and pray with us. Your presence matters. And if this account reached you, if it stirred something in your own heart, do one small thing for me. In the comments, write the word chapel. Just that. The word that once stood in wood was reduced to ash and rose again stronger. Every time I see it, I'll know another person believes these quiet miracles still happen. If you have witnessed or received a grace from Our Lady, something large or something small, share it below. Your words could be the hope someone else needs today. Pass this along to a friend who might need to remember that no wrong is final when mercy steps in. May the Virgin Mary continue to watch over you, your home, and every place where hearts are mending. Amen.